Hello everybody and welcome to my guide on the best way to play the natives in EU4. Now there are essentially three different types of natives that I'm going to break down. If you really look at it, two different types of natives, but I'm going to break it down into three different ways of playing. The first type is a settled tribe. So there are two groups of settled tribes, three groups actually. They're all in North America. We have these guys over here, we have these guys up here, and we have these guys down here. These are actually two separate groups of cultures, but they're kind of in the same area. We're going to pick one of the nations that you'll likely play if you're going to be playing a settled tribe, and that is QuizQuiz. That is because there is a achievement for them. So let's just pick them as our settled tribe, and I'll show you how to play as a settled tribe. Now, your day one is pretty important. We're going to right away build up to our force limit, and we have 3 diplomats. So that is because of our first reform here. We get an extra diplomat and diplo relation as well. If you look at this, we have oral tradition for reform progress and settled down. So we are a settled tribe. We're not going to be gaining any tribal development from raising. So the first thing you want to do, go over here to your production interface, go to diplomacy, go to alliance actions, and go to invite to federation. We're going to invite everybody that we can to our federation. And we're just going to go top to bottom on their willingness to join. And we're going to go one day at a time. All right, it's the 12th. We have 2 diplomats back, and we're going to keep inviting to the Federation. All right, we have 1 more diplomat to send. Now, these nations that are close, we can send diplomats to get them to be friendly with us as well. If you look over here, we see that we have quite a few members in our federation, and these are the modifiers that we get from it. Now, you're probably going to have possibly more than this, possibly less than this, depending on rivalries. If you have members of the same culture group, you're going to get a 100% bonus on your growth. So just invite everybody to the federation, and you're going to be good. But you want to also be the strongest member of the federation, otherwise you're going to lose some each month. But that really doesn't matter as long as you are the federation leader. So you're the federation leader, you're going to gain federation tribal growth each month, and that was the number 1 opening step. And we'll go from there, but I'm going to be playing a different tribe because I didn't record this part when I was making the video for the guide. So we're going to hop into that game. So here you see the game where I will be showcasing my tribal gameplay. We have a bunch of members in our federation, and we have some missions to complete. These are going to give us a few minor bonuses that'll help us in the early part of the game, and nothing more than that. In a few years, you'll be able to pass a federation reform. The first one we want is unified warbands. This will reduce our cohesion to 20, but this means you can call your federation into offensive wars like this. You can see clearly we can call in our entire federation in an offensive war to gain a bunch of territory to make ourselves stronger. As we are 1 province, 1 additional province will make us twice as strong, essentially. So we're going to declare some wars for tribal superiority. The important part here is to get the occupations, and we can take provinces non-co-belligerent as well. Just make sure that our federation members don't occupy them, otherwise we're not going to be able to expand very quickly, and truce timers are going to be a thing. So we core up the province, and we continue with our conquest, just trying to get as many provinces as possible in stated areas as well to increase our income, to let us build some buildings in the future. So we're going to keep declaring wars to expand rapidly with our little vassal swarm we got going on. So here we take some tribal land. We can settle this land for a couple of reasons. 1, to get some extra development and statify that to just get some more money, as well as to get casus belli on our surrounding migratory tribes. So if we have a province next to some of their tribal land, we can get a CB to take that tribal land from them and thus expand our reach. So the next reform we're going to get is joint grain depots. This is going to get us some extra tribal development each month. In this clip, I call my allies into a war in order for them not to defend their allies, so that stops your members from leaving the federation. So this is one of the neat trips you can use to try and keep your federation as big as possible. And we're just going to take both of their provinces, and since they aren't tribal land, we're just going to gain them and core them up right away. And that's just going to further solidify us as the federation leader. Once you win a few wars, you'll get some more money and you'll be able to get high income. This will let your construction costs go down for a number of years, and you can start building the tribal buildings, which are the most important part of playing a tribe. And the next reform is going to be mutual trust for the extra cohesion growth. We're gaining about 2 each month now. Alright, so for buildings we have quite a few options. We can get extra tribal growth by building irrigation, as well as some of the unique buildings where you can build them once in your country that can give you reform progress. Land force limit is also very strong, as well as advisor cost reduction, which is also very strong for generating mana points. But the first thing we're going to be building is the irrigation for that tribal dev. We're going to build a few of these before we start building some other buildings. We just need to gain more tribal dev more quickly. And then the next one we're going to get for the reforms is going to be the goods produced modifier. And then after that, we're going to get the settle costs, so when we settle, we don't have to pay as many monarch points. It is also very important to stay up to date on your tech, especially the mill tech, so that is why we take the mill tech as often as possible, even though we are paying a penalty. So we keep declaring these wars over here. We're going to gain quite a bit of land from these guys because they are also a settled tribe, so that's going to be even better than taking a tribal land, so we don't actually have to pay the points to settle it, and we can also just gain the bonuses from the provinces right away. So it's pretty important to fight these settled tribes quickly, as well as take some tribal land from your migratory neighbors. The next reform is the unified resistance for the attrition for enemies. Then we only have 2 more to go until we can unify our federation. As our tribal development grows, we're going to keep settling land to get more CBs to extend our reach with our total tribal land and who we can conquer. Settling land in states also helps so that you can get the full bonus from that state. If you're waiting for truces, remember that at Miltech 3 you can start drilling to gain that army professionalism, and since your force limit isn't that high, it grows pretty quick. Here's a quick look at our total tribal land for our federation in pink. Remember to use your diplomats to improve relationships with other tribes to join your federation. Remember that you're also going to be getting a full integration of your tribal federation at the final reform, which will come pretty quickly. The last reform is shared knowledge, which gives institution spread, but since we don't have any, it doesn't matter. That's why we saved it for last. We only need 1 more until we can integrate our federation. At 3 irrigation buildings, we'll be able to pass this mission, which gives us some production efficiency. These irrigations are pretty important for settling land that we conquer. For your first government reform decision, we're going to take the middle option. This will get us some extra diplomatic reputation and another diplomatic relation. So that'll help us with inviting people to our federations. Because we're about to pass our final reform, we're going to build the diplomatic reputation building to see if we can't invite some last-minute joiners to our federation before we integrate them. So we get a Diplo Rep Advisor, and that helps push some of the more Western nations to join our federation. Now, once one person joins, it makes it easier for the others to join if they are friendly with the new member. So we add a few more members to our federation, and we are going to click the button to integrate them in just a second. Alright, so the final reform will immediately let you integrate all of your members' land and tribal land into your country. So here we go, we just get a whole lot bigger. And let's not actually take the new traditions, because I think the general native ideas are better. But we gain all this land, and our troops are extremely high. Now, this is a point where you might want to stop, because military power factors into Federation willingness to accept. Before we delete our troops, we're going to try and invite as many members to the Federation as possible. And then once some people are in, then it'll be easier. But we're going to start a new Federation as quickly as we possibly can. So do that before you do anything else. Don't even press on pause, because you want those troops to be an influencing factor in people wanting to join your Federation. Okay, so then we just go around and we full state all of our land. This just gives us a huge income, which will help us build buildings very rapidly. And we'll be able to start doing some of the more cheesy things that make actually playing natives pretty strong, I would think. So yeah, just statify everything here, and we'll move from there. Delete our troops so that we're not losing a bunch of money, and start our new Federation to slowly rebuild that little vassal swarm that we had going on. Again, don't make my mistake here. Make sure that you invite people to your Federation before you start deleting your units. So now is the time to build some more buildings. We want to get that additional advisor cost to save us some mana, as well as the amazing government reform progress growth that it gives. From here on out, we're going to try to focus on the reform progress growth Luckily for us, we actually gained some buildings when we inherited our friends, so we just have a bunch of free buildings from that. So that's really helpful, but we want to be getting as much government progress growth here on going out. So managing our buildings, deleting things that are taking up slots, getting that reform progress growth is going to be huge. So we built up a little bit of money, and we're going to start building these buildings in every single province. That's just going to keep stacking up that reform progress growth, which you'll see how crazy it gets shortly. From here, keep going to war and gaining as much land as we possibly can. This is just going to increase the number of building slots, our total trade power, how much income we have, how fast we can build our buildings. So let's just blob out here. And also make sure to stay up at time on tech. Once we get enough government reform progress, though, we can take this final thing for the extra morale, as we cannot take any of the existing final reforms due to us not having feudalism and not being a migratory tribe that can turn into a horde. So we'll take the extra morale, which will help us out, and yeah, we just can't get feudalism. So if you look up here, you can see how much reform progress we're getting from buildings. That is going to skyrocket. So we're going to gain reform progress very quickly. Additionally, once we can get our vassal swarm back up and running, make sure to pass that federation reform. With the bonus that we are getting now that we are maxed out on our government reform progress, we're just going to expand administration as much as we can to increase our governing capacity. So look at how much we're getting from buildings now. It is close to 6 per month. This is just absolutely nuts how fast we can expand administration. By the time we have colonized all of the Americas, we won't really need too much. Look at here. We have already gained a whole bunch from expand administration. That is a lot of governing capacity. Through conquest and settling our tribal land, this is kind of what our state of the game is before 1500. We're also going to keep inviting to our federation to make it as strong as possible with our little vassal swarm. Remember just to keep building the longhouses in as many provinces as you possibly can. Just the government reform progress modifier is super, super, super huge. Keep growing that expanded administration, and by 1508 we have 480 extra governing capacity. That's going to come in real handy real quick. So Castile finally arrives, and we will make sure to settle next to them, so when the colony finishes we can reform off of their institutions. Finally, we can take the trading with foreigners to embrace all of Castile's institutions. However, before you click this, make sure you have the government reform progress saved up to speed through the tree once you adopt the monarchy government type, as well as have a bunch of monarch points saved up to speed through your technology. As you can see here, though, the Creek Nation is extremely large. We can start statifying all of the tribal land that we just inherited. But again, make sure you have enough government reform progress so you can just speed through this tree. I did not do that. So that was one of my mistakes. You really only need a certain amount saved up, and everything beyond that you can expand administration with. So it shouldn't be too much of a challenge to save up enough to get to the bottom of this tree pretty quickly. It's not necessary, but it's also pretty convenient. So this is a pretty reliable way to just jump up to the #1 great power. And if you look at our government capacity, expand administration is over 700. So we're not going to have a problem with governing capacity, even when we full statify all of North America and even South America. So we can upgrade to Empire, which gives us more gov cap, as well as a bunch of other modifiers. So that's a very high governing capacity for this stage of the game, especially when everything is pretty much full stated. So we take tech as fast as we possibly can, because we're going to have to do battle with the Europeans pretty shortly. But you can see how strong of a nation this is very quickly, and especially into the late game when you want everything to be full stated to have your very powerful armies for MP in particular. So yeah, natives are actually pretty strong in this. You're going to want to go around and statify everything that you can, and you definitely can afford it with your gov cap. So after you statify all of the territory, you're going to be making a pretty sizable income. And since you've taken pretty much all of the land you need to take for your house region, you can gain the extra colonist after building up to 2,000 ducats in your treasury. So that's a great way to make sure that you can clean up your borders and stop Portugal from taking Florida or something like that. Now that we're done with the North American settled tribes, we're going to talk about the Australian natives. Now, these guys are in a particular position where the colonizers won't show up very quickly, so the fastest way is actually to become a horde. I'm going to reiterate that 100 times before this video is done, but let's talk about Australian natives briefly. So just like with settled tribes, the first thing you want to do is have unified warbands. That'll let you take tribal land from your neighboring migratory tribes as well. So getting that click is pretty important. Next, we're going to be rushing down our mill tech. So we're going to try to focus mill and get mill tech as fast as possible. Also, we want to make sure our government reform progress is as high as we possibly can. We want to make sure that we're getting that reform progress growth from our second government reform. Lastly, we're going to make sure we build both of the buildings that give government reform progress. Once those buildings finish, we will be able to gain 1 per month for government reform progress. So in the meantime, just take as much tribal land as you can. Again, here you see that we are getting 1 per month. So what that means is that by the time that we get enough government reform progress to get tier 5 reform, it will be about 50 years from now. So we can get our horde reform in 50 years. This is the fastest way to reform as an Australian tribe. So we need to get Mill Tech 6 and still be a migratory tribe. So settling down is not the best option. It 100% is not the best option here. So we want to go north as far as we possibly can in terms of migrating from province to province and get our exploration ideas in order to take land that has feudalism, embrace feudalism after we become a horde. There is no longer a way to cheese this and settle down and get feudalism quick. They fixed some of the bugs that were with the Australian natives and exploration. So make sure that we migrate and reform into a horde with exploration ideas. Here is an example of migrating and adding land to your tribal land. The more land you have for tribal land, the more expensive it gets in admin cost. Migrating is about 50 and can be reduced with government reform types. So you want to try and use this sparingly as it does cost a lot, and you definitely want to get to your Tech 5 and admin and Tech 6 and mill as fast as you can. So grow big, but not too big. You still want to be able to get your exploration ideas pretty quickly. Because there aren't as many members, mutual trust is pretty important as your second reform to increase your monthly gain. As well as tribal development, make sure that we're getting as much of that as possible. Definitely do not settle down like I do in this clip. You definitely want to make sure you take the rightmost reform. Settling down is the wrong option and will cause you to not be able to reform very quickly. So there used to be a way to explore provinces as an Australian native and be able to get feudalism and reform pretty quickly off of the island tribes, but that I think has been patched. So definitely the fastest way to reform as an Australian native is to go as a horde. So you want to speed up to Mill Tech 6 and remain a migratory tribe like we are here. So instead of taking the settle down, we take the bonus to migrating cost reduction by 25%. That'll let us migrate up north and add more provinces to our tribal land that we will immediately integrate the second that we hit Mill Tech 6. For demonstration purposes, I gave myself everything I needed to reform. Realistically, it would take a long time to get enough mill power to get Mill Tech 6. So in reality, migrating and spending all that mill power might not be the best option, so you should find a balance there. But you can migrate and you can add provinces to your tribal land, but at some point it gets to be really expensive. So remember, you will integrate all of those provinces once you click that final reform, but there is a balance there. So if you can get up towards the island nations, get exploration ideas going, you can start using your horde abilities to just conquer all of Indonesia. So here's us clicking the button. That gives us all of our tribal land, so we can start to explore the world as well as raise provinces to catch up on tech, which is the big power of going horde here. So for North American and South American migratory tribes, the same thing as Australia goes to show, except you have more options because you have more federation options as well. So you want to get a big federation, and you want to either settle down as fast as possible and do the same strategy as in the first example, or B, become a horde. So if you become a horde, what you're going to want to do is probably get next to Mexico and start raising all of their provinces to catch up in tech. Otherwise, you can do the same thing to the settled tribes in the south of North America as well, excluding Mexico. I do still think that settling down in North America is the more efficient option, but if there are not as many tribes around you, like say you're a South American migratory tribe, probably going horde and then using your raising powers on Mexico or the Incas would be the best strat. Well, guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys did learn something. Leave a like down in the comments below and subscribe to the channel if you need to have another refresher on some more native mechanics. I made a video when the natives were introduced. Some of it is outdated and very incorrect, but I will link that at the end of this video as well. So thank you guys very much for watching again, and as always, I will see you next time.